You are now watching CLTV. Please like, share, and subscribe. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to CLTV. Tonight, it's our great joy and pleasure to welcome a student who is going to discuss with us about a very important topic, which is student life away from home. Living away from home has got advantage and disadvantage. Sometimes it seems very challenging. Sometimes it's a very good opportunity that is given to students to test their abilities, to test their capabilities, and also to face new realities that they could possibly not face while they are living with parents. And tonight it's going to be about a student who's going to talk to us about her experience living away from her family home. Welcome, Vanessa.
Oh, hi.
Could you please introduce yourself so that people who are watching this program can get to know you and who you are, what you do?
Hi, so like you said, my name is Vanessa. I am a second year politics and international studies student at the University of Warwick. I'm somebody who's passionate about social inequality and tackling and bringing about justice, basically. I'm somebody who's very active on campus. I'm involved in a society called Warwick Inspire, which is a student-led volunteering society that seeks to tackle education inequality. I'm also somebody who's involved in various aspects of like my university life, whether it's ACS or other things, but yeah.
So why did you choose the University of Warwick?
That's a really good question. So essentially, when I decided to go to Warwick to study the degree that I wanted to study, it was the result of a lot of different things. So for my subjects, my degree, at the time Warwick was leading, and it was amongst the leading universities that taught my subject. And me deciding to go to Warwick was because I compiled a lot of research on various universities and things I thought were important, so where they ranked in the league tables, how the students rated their experience on the course that I'm studying, how they rated their overall experience in the university, what was the employability prospect like. So what was life after uni? Was it a situation where after university and after studying the degree that I'm studying, did they find jobs really quickly? How quickly did they find it? Just a mixture of that. And also I think one of the things that really influenced me, and I think people don't pay a lot of attention to, is like the social life at work. So my university has one of the biggest ACS in the whole country, and ACS is basically the African Caribbean Society. Given the fact that I was now going to go study in a university where I'm a minority, I really found it very important to find myself surrounded by people who were like-minded, people who created a community for me, people who I felt like when things would get challenging, I could lean on them for support. So that's why I essentially chose Warwick.
So what are the challenges that you personally faced living away from your family?
I think challenges in terms of living away from home, there were so many different challenges. There were challenges that I faced that I prepared that I would face, and then there were challenges that I didn't prepare but they came anyways. So one of the things I prepared myself for was adjusting to life in university. I think living away from home, and given the fact that I'm at Warwick, so I'm 2 and a bit hours away from home, I had to prepare myself that as I'm going to university, I had to become a very independent person. I had to be a lot more accountable, a lot more responsible for a lot of things. Because living away from home, my mum and dad can't handle a lot of things for me. So that meant that I had to adopt the mentality that I'm responsible for myself and I'm accountable for myself, and basically taking responsibility, whether it was ensuring that I remained true to the objectives I left home for, so reminding myself that I went to university for my degree, and reminding myself that whatever happened I needed to stay focused. But other challenges that came that I didn't expect that I would face was things like imposter syndrome. So finding myself in a university where I'm largely outnumbered, I'm a minority, and then if you break it down to even like I really like the ACS at Warwick, and it was a safe space, but the idea that even in ACS I'm one of 4 Congolese girls. So it was the idea of trying to find my space, trying to see myself in that circle. Although I had intended to go to Warwick, I think preparing myself for the realities of Warwick, right? Because there's a lot of things that we have expectations for, but then the realities are completely different. So for me, it was literally trying to navigate my space in Warwick and trying to find a place where I could assert as this is my space and this is who I am. And also I think one of the challenges I think which university teaches you about, but it happens in life anyways, it's like I always say university is like a microcosm of life. It's basically navigating the development that was happening within me as a person. So I was growing, and I think one of the challenges I found was keeping up with how much I was growing as a person and how much I was changing as a person, trying to ask myself, am I changing for the better? Is this a good change? Is this a bad change? Do you know, just like seeing like things plan out, things like, yeah.
Sometimes it's a very big, I would say there are battles in families when young students like yourself want to leave the parents and go away. And many parents do not trust their children, their young people, to go away from there, because sometimes they think it's the time for you young people to exercise your freedom in a very, very negative way. What are your feelings with regard to this kind of challenges or the discrepancies in families related to that?
I think I completely understand like parents being reluctant to let their children go. I think no parent is ever ready to see their child grow up and take autonomy for themselves and actually go out and make decisions for themselves. I think there's a natural element to that where as a parent you want to protect your child, you want to keep them in and whatever. And I guess the other aspect of that is parents having certain ideas of what young people get up to when young people get together. I think I understand that completely, but I think for me it's knowing that there's only so much you can shelter your child, there's only so much that you can stop somebody doing what they want to do. I think one of the things I think I want parents to understand is the way they view young people and the way that you view university, and particularly moving away from university, is at times I think disillusioned to what actually the experience is like. Yes, when you move away from home, there's a lot more temptations, there's a lot more, or there appears to be a lot more temptation, or there appears to be a lot more different behaviors that you feel like your child might be exposed to. But I think one of the things I wanted to start off by telling parents is the things that you think they're being exposed to in university, the likelihood is they are also being exposed to those same things at home. University doesn't necessarily mean that you see a lot of it. It just means in university it feels like it's a lot more concentrated. And I think it's just the idea of basically that, I think we always talk about this, when you go to university, like a conversation we have amongst students is people having this need, desire to rebrand. So rebranding is, you go to university and let's say at home everybody knew you as a quiet, calm person that you just liked to, didn't like certain things, but you come to university and you feel the pressures of conforming to the environment, whether that is surrounding yourself with people who you don't necessarily think are good for you, or whether it's going down a certain path that you know you shouldn't really be going down. And it's like that pressure, and I think a lot of people like to give university this bad press as if it's only university that happens. But I think in reality, this is a challenge that a lot of people face in life anyways. So that's where I would want to start off. And secondly, I think it's also understanding that there's a lot of things that come with life, and there's a lot of things that naturally people stir off the wrong path, and they stir off and they go to like doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But I think not that parents should feel as though that they should not allow their children to go to university or to take these steps because of the negative things. I think it's just weighing up the pros and the cons. So there's sometimes there's people who can say like, okay, if I keep you at home, I'm protecting you, I know what you're going to be doing all the time. There's no, like, I'm not going to be worried that you're going to be doing this, what, the other. I'm going to keep an eye on you, right? There's that side. But then there's also the side of weighing up that sometimes for certain children, going away from home is the best thing. Like for me, going away from home has taught me so much that I wouldn't have learned if I had stayed at home. It's taught me independence. It's taught me the ability to be resilient, because I know that when I'm in university, as much as I have my parents on the phone, I can call them for anything. When something's happening, I'm my own parent in that situation. So I think what I would like to communicate is just in order to bridge those anxieties that parents have, to ensure that parents and children in their homes are being as honest with each other, as transparent, and communicating with each other. Do you know? Because I think there's an element where I think parents have a lot of anxiety and their children haven't communicated with them. So the anxiety fosters and it leads to them speculating that, okay, when you're in university, you're doing X, Y, the other. But when you communicate, you eradicate all these things. Yeah.
I think communication is the most important thing, as you have just mentioned. Can I just ask a question? Was it easy for you, for your parents, to accept your idea of moving away, going to university?
Do you know what? I have had this conversation with a lot of my friends, and for me personally, going away from from home and living in university didn't pose that much of a problem to me. I think it was down to a variety of different things. Starting off with, I think before I got to the point of talking about university, I've always had a very good communication level with my parents. So I've always communicated, and before I made the decision to even go to Warwick, I let my parents know that I was considering not staying in Manchester. That was one of the considerations I had, and I told them there was all the university I applied to, I think only one university was in Manchester, and that was the University of Manchester. So I started that process of communicating with them, which I guess alleviated any anxieties they had in terms of letting me go. But I think another side of it, I think, was down to me taking accountability and responsibility for myself. If I wanted my parents to trust me in that I'm making the decision for the next step of my life, I'm not going to be under your roof, I'm going to go take care of myself, I'm going to go to a different university, I had to show that I was responsible enough to be given that much control and power over my life. So that the way I did that was I did a lot of research. I went to find out what's the crime levels like in this university, what are people like in this university, what am I actually getting myself, what am I signing myself up to, and then trying to have that communication. I think for me, my dad wasn't as reluctant to let me go, because I think it's just the principle of, I think there's that trust that I know what I'm doing and I know what's best for me. But I think for my mum, it was just, I remember her saying to me, but you don't know anyone in Coventry, but if something happens, who's going to come and look after you? And she had all these questions, and I think for me, to try and make sure that the transition from home to university was as smooth as possible, I literally just had to have a relationship with her where I understood that she's just curious and she doesn't know the full picture, and I had to ensure that I was communicating. So whether that was, I think I was picking accommodations and sitting my mum down and being like, okay, these are my accommodation choices, and having them as involved as possible. Because I think if you involve your parents as much as possible, I think a part of their reluctance to let children go, I think it's just understanding that their child is grown up and they don't need them anymore, and there's that desire to keep them as young as possible and whatever. But because I was including her in the conversation and showing her that this is actually a dialogue, that this is what's happening, there wasn't that much. But I do know of friends whose parents have been very no, I don't want you to go to university, I want you to stay, for different reasons really. But I think all it comes down to is basically what is best for that person at that stage in their life. Do you get what I mean? Because I understand parents being anxious and stuff like that, but you also need to understand that your child is taking the next steps for what is best for their life. And as a parent, there should be an element where you step back and you allow them to take the decisions and make the decisions that they want to make, just because it's their life that it's going to impact. And you don't want them to grow up resenting that mum and dad kept me at home when I knew it was time for me to leave.
Just for those who are watching this program, we would like you to like the program, subscribe and share this show with your friends and your network so that many people can get access to this experience. And we will appreciate that if you can do that for us. Ms. Vanessa, I just want to ask you one question with regard to university life and peer pressure. How did you find the peer pressure at university when you joined away from home?
I think, like I said before, a lot of the things you face at university, it's not just that university has it greater, it feels a lot more concentrated just because you're in that atmosphere where, especially if you go to a university like mine where it's a campus university, so you're not in a city university, you're just surrounded by other people who are in the same position as you, it can make you feel as though the pressures are greater.
So was it easy for you, or was very tough and you just gave in, or did you resist?
In terms of the pressures, I think it depends on what you're going to describe as a pressure. For instance, I think one of the pressures when you come to university, at least my university, because it's such a high-ranked university, and the job prospects, as in people who go to Warwick tend to, at the end of Warwick, go and work in the corporate industry. In terms of pressures, I think one of the pressures I felt was more so to do with career. So the idea that I said to myself, when we were going to university, I'm going with an open mind, that I'm going to explore every career avenue. I want university to be an experience where I allow myself exposure to everything, exposure to different industries, to different careers, things that I didn't think I wanted to do, but I had a little bit of an interest in, just so I can develop for my own personal development, and just so I know as a person that, okay, I like this, no, I don't like that. So for me, one of the pressures I felt was trying to navigate that, because everybody in Warwick seems to have this idea that you go to Warwick, you get amazing grades, you come out, you go and become somebody in the corporate world, and it can sometimes feel like you're not allowing yourself to access everything else, whether it's jobs in, let's say, the charity sector, jobs in the public sector, and other things like that. So I think that was a pressure I had to literally say to myself that I'm not like everybody else. I think one of the advices that I used to receive when I was home was, I'm not everybody, and so I can't conform to what everybody does. So when it came to career and feeling this pressure to go down the corporate industry, I had to keep saying to myself that I'm only going down this path if I'm actually interested in it, or if this is something that I'm genuinely passionate about. I'm not going down this so I could be impressive on things like LinkedIn to tell everybody that, oh, this is what I'm doing. It's just genuinely for my own benefit. When it comes to pressures in terms of other things, whether it's like the social aspects of university, and like I guess university, especially British university, just because we have that university culture and that student culture. I think one of the things I found very weird moving away from home was how normalized certain things were. I think university and teens and like people in the transitional stages between college and university have normalized things like alcohol abuse and drug abuse and stuff like that. And it seems to be something that everybody does, like, it's so calm. I remember speaking to one of my friends and she was telling me about somebody, and then I was like, because they took a picture, and I was like, he's holding something, like, he was holding like a drug in the picture. And then she goes, yeah, but everybody smokes weed. And I was like, oh, everybody smokes weed? That's not something I knew before I came to university. And I think in that aspect...
How can you keep your identity in this kind of things? Everybody smokes weed.
It's just the thing that I had to remind myself who I was before I entered that institution. That I knew that I was going to change as a person. Change is inevitable, but I had to understand what kind of changes were happening around me. And I had to understand myself enough to discern where I needed to be and where I didn't need to be. In terms of understanding my identity and ensuring that I'm not conforming to things that I think are completely outside of my identity, I had to continuously have conversations with myself where I was saying to myself, okay, I could be around you guys if that's what you're going to do, but I'm not going to do that. And making it clear with the friends that I have that, okay, if you guys do that, that's fine. I'm not going to judge you, but don't make me do that. I'm not going to do that. And I think being firm with that. And I think one of the things I think with moving to university, that you have to assert your identity and you have to assert who you are. Because I think I grew up knowing that if you're the type of person that you allow your environment and the people that you are around to influence how you behave, you always find yourself in rooms where when you were in this room you're behaving like this, but in this room you're behaving like this, and it becomes confusing. And even people, I think, don't respect you enough because it's like, you don't even know who you are. So when you're around me, I can tell you who you are. And I think that was one of the things that I had to continuously say to myself, and also say to the people in my circle that there's no judgment with me. Like, I'm not going to judge what you're doing. Just as long as you and I have an understanding that this is my identity, and because of my culture and because of my religious beliefs and just because of the person that I've grown up being, I'm not going to do that. If you choose to do that, that's absolutely fine. That's your life. Do you get what I mean? So
now let's talk about life away from home as a student. And given the coronavirus environment or the pandemic realities, so I think this will have an impact on many students in terms of their well-being, mental health as well. So how do you see, or how do you guys overcome this kind of mental health issues within your university life away from home?
I think the conversation about mental health is something that I think shouldn't always start with university. I think mental health is something that I think when you talk about it, it's basically just understanding how healthy your mind is, right? Everybody knows physical health is how healthy your body is. Mental health is just the question of how healthy is your mind. I think at various points in university, not just because of the coronavirus, I think moving to university itself can be something that's a lot challenging.
That's right.
Especially when you find yourself, especially for people who find it hard to adapt to changing circumstances and environments. I think it can cause a lot of issues in terms of stress, in terms of trying to find friends and stuff like that. Anxiety,
depression as well.
And yeah, there's a real feeling of in university where...
And future uncertainty sometimes.
Future uncertainty, where you're in a university bubble, where it feels like you're going through things but you're alone. And I think that's something that before coronavirus, everybody, I think in university, you can ask them, they at one point in their degree or within their university experience felt as though they were alone, which has had a lot of negative mental health aspects. I think where corona has been extremely detrimental to mental health is because of the fact that everything has happened so abruptly. We've had to move everything online. There's not been that much communication between the government and say universities, because I think a lot of university students feel the frustrations of every time that the nation has been addressed in regards to coronavirus. It feels like students are always left out of that conversation, right? So that leaves it down to our universities to basically use their intuition to tell us what is next. Do you understand? And that can be very difficult, because I think it means that for students at least, we have a very our experiences aren't the same. So basically for students who they have a university that's actively ensuring that they're looking after students, they're actively ensuring that students are being supported whilst they're transitioning from face-to-face learning and teaching to maybe when they were saying blended, where it was like face-to-face half the time and then sometimes virtual or completely virtual. If you were feeling supported around that, I guess it would have been a lot easier on your mental health. I can't speak for everybody, because some people may have still found that challenging. But for university, where that support wasn't there, I think it was very damaging. I think even for me, there's been times where I've said that virtual learning has been very difficult. I think it's because virtual learning has removed all the human interactions that we usually have.
That's right.
So whether it's going to a seminar and knowing that I'm not 100% sure on the reading, or I'm not 100% sure on the topic, and when somebody's speaking and looking around the classroom and everybody seems as confused as I am, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm reassured that this is just a very difficult topic and everybody has struggled. But because of things being online and like it's computers and it's whether you have your microphone on, your camera's on, you don't get to see people, and you don't get to see those human cues that lets you know how other people are feeling. It can feel as though there is a world where it's just you and your degree and you're facing that, and especially because everything's now online and it's in your house, right? So there's that removal of the ability of knowing that, at least last year I knew that if I'm going to the library, I'm going to go do work. When I'm in my room, I'm not working, I'm trying to de-stress. This is my space, this is my time. But because there's been that removal, it's like my room is where I work, but my room is also where I sleep. My room is also where if I'm stressed, I'm in my room, but if I'm not stressed, it becomes almost like a prison. Right. And I think that can be very damaging mentally, because you feel like you're alone.
So if you were a student living with the parents or with your family in this kind of situation, you might probably have your support from your parents, support bubble from your own family. So living away from the family, and if you face any mental issues, to whom will you turn?
I think that's a really good question, and I think that's a question that a lot of students have asked, and I think those questions should be directed towards your university student union. So those are the voices in your student, they speak on your behalf basically. Right. You elect them, and there's whole elections, they tell you what they want for the student body, and you basically pick them. And when you feel as though you're going through difficult times where you feel like you want to be supported, there's different avenues you can take. Whether, I think for me, I'm blessed in the fact that I know of different people I can reach out to. So whether it's my course module directors, or whether it's my personal tutor. So in my university, when I come into university, I have a personal tutor who is responsible for looking after me and ensuring that the transition is easy. So whether it's, I think last term, the last year we had meetings, so I actually, when I met him, and I was literally just explaining to him the anxieties I had in university, and he literally was reassuring me, like he's there for me. So it's like somebody that's on your side, basically.
I think here the problem is everything's virtual.
Yeah.
So if you are having some difficulties mentally, in terms of mental health issues, how can you get the support from that mentor of yours?
Okay, so for me, in my case, it's just a thing, and I think that's where I go back to, like, Corona has made things a lot more harder. You have to now take the initiative of emailing teachers and stuff like that,
Right.
which I think university has a culture of you have to be independent anyway, so there is help there, but you have to be able to know how to access it. So for me, it was literally, like, throughout this week even, I had different meetings, advice and feedback hours we call them. So I had one with my module coordinator.
Was it face-to-face?
No, I booked it because my university uses Microsoft Teams. So I booked an appointment. We had it via Microsoft Teams.
Okay.
I spoke to her about any concerns I had, and I asked her, and she spoke to me. Then she reassured me that obviously there's support there, and then she advised me that we have welfare system in my university. She advised me to go to the welfare system and to access help from there. So she actually helped me navigate what to do next, and then she told me also to speak to my personal tutor. Sorry.
Yeah.
So then it was a thing where I had to send an email to my personal tutor and be like, okay, these are some of the difficulties I'm having, and then it's like basically the help is there, but it's virtual right now, which I guess for me has been beneficial because I feel supported in that way, but I don't know how other students are finding navigating mental health and whether those systems are still running and operating as they should. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching CLTV. We would like to subscribe, like, and share this video. We are talking tonight or today about student life away from home. Living away from home as a student could be sweet and sour in the meantime. Sometimes it makes you happy to be away from your family environment, to enjoy your freedom, and sometimes it could be also very challenging as well. So it's up to individual students to make the decision along with their parents whether this will be beneficial or not, but remind to yourself, students, that your life is in your hand. When you decide to leave the family home to go away, your life is in your hand. What you do with it depends on yourself, but the consequences as well will impact on your own life. So tonight it has been a very great pleasure to have Vanessa with us, a university student. We would like to tell the parents sometimes following our conversation, for you to have your student or your son or daughter going away from home, it should not be a big problem. The bottom line is try to cultivate dialogue in the family.
Yes.
Try to understand your daughter or your son very well. Have their interest in your heart to know maybe where they are going to progress very well. And sometimes it's very good to give them the opportunity to explore the realities of life, and also guiding them throughout the procedure so that they can become very responsible men or women in the future. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for coming. And we're going to finish our program just by calling on other students who have their experience or any story to tell. Please contact us. You will have our contact details on the screen. Please keep in touch. Many thanks indeed.
You've proven yourself in my life, and I've come to realize you're too faithful to fail.